By now, you've probably heard of CloudBot, MoltBot, or OpenClaw, and seen the amazing things that it can do. People are having it send emails, manage calendars, do research, and even book flights, all from a simple text message. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through not just the easiest way, but one of the safest way to set it up, especially if you're not a deeply technical person. But before we get into that, what actually is MoltBot, and how is it different from all the AIs that we're used to, like ChatGPT or Claude? And more importantly, should you even be running it from your own computer? Here's the thing that most people get wrong. MoltBot is not a new AI model. It's not smarter than Claude or GPT. In fact, it leverages existing LLMs like Claude or GPT as its brain to run its systems. So essentially, we're giving hands to Claude and GPT, and more importantly, continuity, to be able to act just like an assistant to us. With regular AI, you ask a question and it gives you an answer. It reacts only when triggered and prompted, and then it goes back to sleep. With MoltBot, you give it a goal and it actually does the thing. You'll search the web, read your files, send emails, schedule meetings, whatever you need. And here's the kicker. It runs 24/7 in the background through a program called a daemon that's always awake and listening for two things: messages from you and scheduled tasks that you set up for it through a thing called cron jobs. Like, check my stocks every 30 minutes. It also maintains continuity by storing what it learns from you in text and loading in relevant pieces before each task. So when you combine all these elements together, it seems like you have an assistant that has continuity of context and being able to work independently without you having to prompt it every step of the way. So why are folks rushing to buy Mac Minis and running this thing on a dedicated hardware? Well, because of the versatility and the independence that it can run on. You're probably giving it a lot of autonomy and power. MoltBot can read files, execute commands, send emails, install software, basically do anything you can do on your computer. And that's powerful and kind of terrifying when you think about it. So you might not want to go ahead and install this on your main work computer. We've got client data, personal photos, text documents, all that stuff. This is why people are either running it on a separate dedicated device like Mac Mini, or use something called a VPS, or a virtual private server. So what is VPS? Think of it like a boxed up computer in the cloud. It is a dedicated computer provision for you and isolated from any other computers. So if anything goes wrong, it's not affecting your real computer, only the one in the cloud. But here's the catch. Unless you know a lot about security hardening, setting up firewalls, managing SSH keys, configuring proper access controls, VPS can actually be riskier than you think. Because now you've got a server exposed to the internet that needs to be properly secured. If you don't know what you're doing, you could be opening yourself up to all kinds of problems. So VPS is like renting a small apartment in a big city. You SSH into the instance, and the SSH key is the apartment key that you use to go inside and do anything you want, rearrange furniture, install new appliances, and store valuables. When you run MoltBot, you're giving your AI assistant a copy of that key and all the permissions to move furniture, install stuff, and make holes in the walls if you let it. If someone breaks into your apartment, they get whatever you stored in there. And if they find a spare key and access to that apartment, they might use it as their real home too. This is where Cloudflare comes in. With Cloudflare Worker, it is a similar concept in the sense that it is an isolated system in the cloud, but having a worker is like renting a locked kiosk in a controlled shopping mall, instead of an apartment in a city. You can decorate the kiosk and run your assistant from there, but you never actually sleep there, and you don't store your personal house keys in it. Mall Security, which is Cloudflare, who maintain, obviously, the security, manage the kiosk, make arrangements about how power and internet might be provided, and what doors that the kiosk can connect to. So even if something goes wrong at the kiosk, the intruder is stuck in the mall space, and it can't follow you home because there's no door from the kiosk back to your house. So if you're a non-technical person who just wants to try MoltBot safely, I'm going to show you the easiest way to set it up on Cloudflare Moltworker. This is specifically designed for people who want to use MoltBot without dealing with all the server setup, security hardening, and any of that technical stuff. But fair warning, it does still require a bit of basic technical understanding on how things all connected together. I'm going to walk you through step by step explaining every step of the way on how or why you're doing certain things. But at the end of the day, deploying MoltBot in Cloudflare's infrastructure means you're not managing server yourself, you're not exposing your personal computer, and Cloudflare is handling all the security side of things. It's basically plug and play, and you connect your messaging apps, plug in your AI API keys, and you're good to go. All right, so with all that said, let's jump right in. So the first thing you want to do is head over to github.com/cloudflare/moltworker. So this GitHub repo has all the documentation of how to deploy the Moltworker onto Cloudflare. Now, essentially, there are two ways that you can approach this. The first, obviously, is using the Cloudflare UI. You can go into your dashboard and set it up without typing in any code. So it's just all click and drag and copy pasting a couple of things. The other way is, of course, through your terminal, where you can actually type in the commands. And in fact, I think if you look through the documentation, a lot of it is showing you the way to set it up through the terminal commands. And so if you're comfortable with that, you can go ahead and do that. But here I'm going to run you through how to set it up without actually going through the terminal. So before we go ahead and set it up, I just want to explain what we're doing here. As you can see, Cloudflare has actually given us this diagram to show exactly what is the flow of access going to look like and the kind of security that's going to put in place in their architecture. So you've got the JWT token, which is JSON Web Token, which is like a ticket if you want to get into a concert hall, for example, or a cinema, right? So the security to check whether you've got the right ticket to get in, so not everybody can get in. And even once you get in, there's gateway keys and a few other keys that's going to make sure that the security is tight and that the correct controls are being implemented at the appropriate junctures. So you can see that this is how the access goes into Cloudflare Worker before it goes into the sandbox container, which is essentially just a isolated environment to run the control UIs. And all of that context information goes into what we call an R2 bucket, which is like, if you're familiar with S3 bucket, you can just think of it like a place to store memories in text format. So this is very important because this is going to allow your Moltworker or your MoltBot to maintain continuity in terms of context. So it's not just forgetting stuff that you've told it or it's been doing. So this is very essential in terms of making it feel like it's an actual 24/7 assistant that's there for you. And once this is all set up, then you can actually connect it with, Slack, Telegram, or any other messaging apps that you want so that you'll be able to communicate in a more convenient way. But as you can see later on, you can actually start chatting with it through the Cloudflare chat UI. And also, before you go ahead and set it up, there are two requirements when it comes to cost, which is you need the Workers paid plan on Cloudflare, which is just $5 a month. Of course, to run the LLM itself, like I've mentioned, MoltBot itself is not the AI, right? There's an underlying LLM that acts as the brain to power MoltBot. And in this case, it is Anthropic that we're going to use, so that's Claude. So you do need the Anthropic API key, which I'll show you where to get later on as well, if you're not familiar how to get that. All right, so the first thing you want to do is in the same documentation, there is a pretty easy deploy to Cloudflare button here that you can click. And of course, if you don't already have a Cloudflare account, what you want to do is just go over to cloudflare.com and you can start for free and basically just set up your account. You don't need to pay anything just yet, but like I said, you will eventually need to subscribe to the Workers paid plan, which is $5 a month. And once you've set that up, you can go back to the GitHub repo and click on that link and you have all this whole thing set up for you. But alternatively, of course, you can go over to your left-hand sidebar here and click on Workers and Pages and set up a new worker as well. So here I already have my Git account set up. So if you don't already have that, you can actually connect it to your GitHub or GitLab account. And also, if you don't have any of these accounts, go over to GitHub, set up an account, it's free, and you're good to go. So essentially what we're doing here is we're actually making a repo or a backup data of what you're building on Cloudflare. So if anything happens, you can actually go back and see what was the latest build that was automatically copied over to your Git account, right? So in this case, I'm gonna check create private Git repo because I don't want it shared publicly. And our project name, I'm going to leave it as MoltBot Sandbox and create R2 bucket. I don't currently have an R2 bucket, so I'm just going to create new and name your R2 bucket MoltBot data. I'm going to leave it as that. And then location hint. Currently, I'm in Western Europe, so I'm going to pick that. Now here is where you need to put in your Anthropic key. So this is basically just the API key that's associated to your Claude account. And I think if you click on this link here, it will actually lead you to, yes, this is where we need to go, which is platform.cloud.com/ well, I already have an account, so I am automatically logged in. But if you don't have an account yet, again, set up the account and put in your billing details. And under API keys, this is where you can create an API key. So right here, create API key, and you can leave the workspace as default. So we can name this OpenClaw key, for example, right? So you add that, and there you go. You have the API key, copy key, and then you can go back and paste the API key right here. Of course, I'm going to revoke this API key after this recording, and you should keep it secret as much as possible. So MoltBot Gateway Token is the token that is going to secure the access to the gateway. And to generate this, well, just follow the instruction. It says open SSL, and this whole chunk, just copy this and go over to your terminal, right? So if you're on a Mac, just go over to apps and type in, terminal, come on, okay? So you're gonna just paste that whole line over there and hit enter, and there's gonna be a token generated on your terminal. All right, so just to explain what we're doing here, open SSL random hex key, this is just telling your system to generate a long line of password, right? So this is entirely random characters that is generated by your system, right? So that's all it's doing. You theoretically can come up with your own password if you want to. So just paste that gateway token over there. And here I'm going to leave everything as is, npm run build, npm run deploy, and then we're going to hit create and deploy. And this is going to take a few minutes, so we'll check right back in when it's done building. So as you can see, it's initializing the build and deploying the Moltworker currently to your environment. Again, we have not connected it to anything, so it's just setting up all the necessary pieces right now. It's not doing anything crazy, so we're just going to let it do that. And while that's building, I also just want to run you through what we're exactly doing, which step we're at vis-a-vis the documentation by Cloudflare. So here, as you can see, if we're using the terminal approach, it's actually asking us to install all these things. And that is exactly what we're doing right now on the UI. Here, Wrangler is essentially the command line that Cloudflare has. And it's asking Wrangler basically these lines to input or introduce a secret called AI Gateway API Key, AI Gateway base URL, which actually we have set up, right? So we have put in the API key, and later on under secrets, you'll be able to see that we have these two secrets set up. And meanwhile, as you can see here, the export MoltBot gateway token, OpenSSL random hex 32, which is essentially what we were doing earlier on the UI, right? So it's generating that, putting it as the gateway token, and then npm run deploy is basically the command to actually get it to build. So it's still building right now, but I thought it might be a good time to also mention something that I forgot earlier, which you need to install Node.js in order to run all these things. So Node.js basically is a system, a program which runs JavaScript. And because the deployment and a lot of the system environments are run with JavaScript, that's why you do need this installed in your system. So if you don't already have that installed, just go ahead to nodejs.org. So if you want to think about it, the way I would explain it is that if JavaScript is a DVD which has the content of whatever you want to download, deploy in the environment, Node.js is the DVD player, right, which runs all these things. So yeah, just go ahead and install that if you don't already have it right here. All right, so it looks like the build has been completed. So we're gonna go back to the workers and pages here to see if we're able to see the workers now. There we go. So there's the MoltBot sandbox-awm. So we're gonna just open that, and we can see in a pretty visual format what asset it has, what it's connected to. So we've set up the R2 bucket. I just want to mention that when I was running all of that, because I already have a paid plan on Cloudflare, there was no pop-up to ask me to upgrade to the paid workers plan. So if you don't already have a paid plan on Cloudflare, that's when the pop-up will show, and you're just gonna have to go ahead and subscribe to the workers paid plan, which is $5. And there's another plan, which is the R2 bucket paid plan, which is going to be $0. So you can just set that up as well. And lastly, there's going to be a zero trust plan, which is also $0 that you can subscribe later on as we go into the application part of it. All right, so here we see that the MoltBot technically has been set up on the instance. So now we're just going to connect all the secrets and set up the correct environment variables. So here we want to go into the settings tab here. These are the URLs that you're going to interact with the MoltBot on. Right now it's not working because we need to set up a couple more things. So here I want to click on the triple dot here and toggle on Cloudflare Access here, where I can manage the Cloudflare Access, and this pop-up will show where it's showing you the audience token as well as the JWK's URL. So this is basically the token to ensure the security and manage the application that can access the instance, right? So this is just another layer of security that we're setting up. So we want to copy that and put it somewhere safe. So if you have a Node scratchpad somewhere, store it over there. Of course, I'm going to revoke all of this after recording. And yeah, you can hit dismiss once you store that. And as mentioned earlier, we do already have two secrets automatically created, right? So the API key, the MoltBot gateway token. So then where you want to go is head over to manage Cloudflare Access. And this is a slightly different dashboard. It is actually a zero trust access. And here, because I already have the account set up, but you might be asked to set up a zero trust plan, which is at $0. So if a pop-up shows up for that, just go ahead and subscribe to the plan. It's $0. And you should have the same access as I do right now. So what we're gonna do here is just follow the documentation right here, right? So it says, add your email address to the allow list. So what I wanna do is actually go over to policies and go into policy details. As you can see, my emails have already been added. So if you want to edit that and you want to edit the policies, you can actually click on the policy button and configure, and you can add other people's email addresses and stuff like that, right? But that's all configured for me, so I'm not going to mess around with it. I'm just going to go over to part 3 of the documentation here, where I'm going to add paths to protect, right? So this is essentially referring to the basic information, public hostname right here, and I'm just going to paste that, pick the right domain right here. Under path, I'm going to just add, the cf_admin/star and all these other ones. So I've added all of that and hit save application. And we're just gonna take the AUD tag right here, right? So we're gonna copy this entire chunk. And what we're gonna do is to go back to our dashboard right here. And what we'll do is to add a secret. And the secret name is cf_access_AUD. So you can get that from here, right? And just gonna paste the entire value here. And we're gonna say version, right? So we don't need to hit deploy every time. Okay, so that's adding the secret right here. So this is just a bunch of secret keys that you need to add in to connect everything. So the second thing that you want to add here, based on the documentation, is the cf access team domain. So here's secrets, cf access team domain. Where you want to hit to is the settings. As you can see, this is the team name and team domain is right here, right? So you just want to copy. So again, how I got to here is just on the left-hand side bar here, click on settings, and essentially you'll come to this page and just copy this, go back to the dashboard and just copy that domain. And this time I'm going to hit deploy so that everything else that I've updated before gets deployed as well. So now we've come to the last part of creating the R2 bucket, which, as I've mentioned earlier, which is the database that's going to store all the memory in text format in the bucket, right? So how we're going to do that is we're going to head over to Cloudflare dashboard here. And you can literally type in R2, or you can go over to storage databases, and under that you'll see the R2 object storage as well. And as you can see, we have previously created a bucket called MoltBot data. So it comes by default when you're creating the worker, not by default, but it's an option that we picked, right? So now what we want to do is we want to go over to the API tokens. We're going to hit manage here. Right, so here we're going to go ahead and create account API token right here. So that's the R2 account token. We're going to hit object read and write, and we want it to apply to specific buckets only, which is our Molt data and TTL. So this is basically the expiry for the token. I'm just going to leave it as forever because I'm going to revoke this afterwards anyway. So we're going to create an API token now. So yeah, now the API token is created. What you want to take is actually the access key ID, because if you go through the documentation, it asks for the access key ID and secret access ID right here, right? So we're going to take the access ID. Again, you want to save this somewhere safe where it's not public and just keep it to yourself, right? Of course, for me, I'm going to revoke this, all of this afterwards. And same thing with the secret access key. You want to click to copy and copy the entire thing, right? And where you want to go after this is back to your dashboard. And these are the two secrets that we want to add, right? So here, we're going to click on add. And we're going to add secret variable name R2 access key ID. So R2 access key ID, and we're going to paste the access token that we got. And then we're going to go ahead and add the other one, which is also another secret. And this time is R2 secret access key. And we're going to paste the entire secret key over there. And we've got the two access keys set up. But lastly, we want the CF account ID. And where you can find that is to find your account ID, go to Cloudflare dashboard. So here's the dashboard, and if you click on the three dot right here, you can copy the account ID and go back and again add another secret, this time the CF account ID, which is essentially the copy paste of what we have here, and then paste the account ID in and hit deploy. So here we're going to try to go to this URL now, since we have everything set up, and see if everything works as expected. So I'm loading up the URL. It says that it's waiting for Moltworker to load. And this might take, again, like I said, it's 1 or 2 minutes. So we're just going to hang in here. Okay, so it says that Moltworker is ready. So there we go. So I'm connected to Clawdbot Gateway dashboard. However, there is an issue, which is invalid or missing token. Replace this with your token. And this sometimes happens because you're now at a layer of pairing the device. All right, so we do need to log into the admin side to approve the pairing of the device. So where you want to go is actually go to MoltBot, your whole URL, dev / at the / _admin /star, that will lead you to the admin. If you're logging in for the first time, it's going to ask you to authenticate. So it's going to send you an OTP. So you need to go to the inbox to actually validate the OTP and be led to this admin dashboard. So I see that the paired device is already here. Let me try to refresh that. So here, once I refresh my MoltBot admin page, you'll see that there is a pending pairing request coming in. So this is the one. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this. And if it doesn't work for you guys, you sometimes need to wait a couple of minutes for it to actually get the pairing request. So just be patient, wait for it to show up, refresh it a couple of times. And yeah, and once you approve it, things should work. So if you go back to the main workers.dev/chat, now you can actually chat with the Clawdbot. So it seems to be working now. Let's say hi, just chat with it and see if it responds. So you are, hey, I just came online, first installed empty memory, the whole deal. So who am I, who are you, what are we doing here? Yeah. And so yeah, you can ask, can you tell me what skills do you currently have, for example? So it doesn't seem to be responding. So let's go hello. Oh, there we go. So it was just lagging a little bit. So it's coming up with the list of skills. Built-in skills, Blue Bubble, GitHub, Notion, Slack, Weather. So skills are basically the tools that you're going to provide it with. So if you go to the left-hand side bar here and under skills, you'll see that we've got a couple of useful skills that you might want to use. For example, you want to connect it. GOG is a big one, connect it to your Gmail, to your Google Workspace, which is also terrifying sometimes if you have some sensitive stuff. Of course, it's going to try its best to follow your instructions. But again, when utilizing agents, do start small in bits and pieces so that, you get experience as to how they can hallucinate and go off the rails. And so you can put in the necessary limits to their controls as required. Now, of course, chatting with CloudBot through this user interface is great, but you might want to chat with it on the go. So this is where if you go to channels, you can connect it to a plethora of messaging app, WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, Google Chat, Slack, etc. So it's pretty easy to connect. Let me know if you have any problems connecting it to any one of these. With Telegram, it's especially easy to connect. You just need to head over to Telegram and go to BotFather and hit start and essentially set up your new bot, get your API key and pasting it back to the appropriate fields. So let me know if you have any problems doing any part of this, and I might do another video just to cover that. But yeah, otherwise it's probably one of the easiest, if not one of the safest way to set up CloudBot, MoltBot, OpenClaw, I don't know what they're calling it these days, with multiple layers of security and security management that is outsourced from you. So even if you're not too technical, you don't have to stay awake at night wondering if you're maintaining the server correctly or the secrets correctly, etc. Right? And there you go. I hope you're able to set it up with no big issues. But if you're facing any issues in any part of connecting it, do leave a comment down below and I'll try to respond to you as soon as I can. But if you find content like this valuable, please consider subscribing and I'll see you in the next one.